This is Holden Rouse, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, good people. Thank you for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. Today's guest is passionate about what we eat. He's a food scientist, product innovator, great smiler, and CEO of Dyverg Brands. Please welcome Holden Rouse to the program. How you doing, Holden?
I'm doing great, Matt. It is wonderful to be here. I'm excited to be doing the podcast. This is good.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and not just you. I'm excited to have that colorful artwork in the background. So, folks, if you're just listening to the audio, please check out our YouTube channel so you can appreciate the background we've got going on. Holden, you have one of the most kind of eclectic, impressive backgrounds of any guest we've had.
Thank you.
Before we get into the present, I want to learn a little bit more about your past. So, where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in northern Kentucky, a suburb of Cincinnati, and really got into the food industry through my mom and grandma cooking for the holidays. I think we're recording this with the holidays coming up. So it's a special time for me where I was able to cook for family at such a young age and got into food and wanted to somehow work in my scientific background with food. And luckily, Cincinnati is a big hub for what's called the flavor industry, and was able to start in the flavor industry after going to the University of Cincinnati to get a food science degree, and started working with a company called Wild Flavors. So Wild Flavors is one of the top flavor companies in the world. And I'm sure if you've had any food or beverage product out of a grocery store, you've had their product. So
from there, Wild Flavors. But I want to rewind just a bit because I have youngish kids, and we're trying to encourage them to cook. It's not always great for the countertops, but I think long term it'll benefit them. So you mentioned these memories with your mom and grandma. What were some of the first things you made in the kitchen?
So one thing that my mom always had us do during Christmas season was a dish called breakfast pizza. And it is just the easiest thing for a kid to make. It is flattened out crescent rolls, so out of the can, and you just put a sheet tray of those flat, and then you just put some scrambled eggs on it and some browned sausage and just let that bake together. And it is just so delicious. And of course, when you're young, anything that you make is going to taste better than someone else making the same dish because it's yours, you own it. So that's what really got me into it.
And I found I do a lot of cooking at home, and they're less critical if they don't like how I made the eggs or pancakes, if they've done it themselves, realizing it's not perfect. And so, you got into breakfast pizza. After you kind of honed your chops a bit, Holden, what were some of the dishes that, when you wanted to kind of puff your chest out and boast a little, what's some of the stuff you made then?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say I started really cooking my own recipes going into high school and trying to make different sauces to go with whatever my mom was making. I think that was fun because she'd be making like a roast beef or something. I'm like, all right, I'm going to make some kind of gravy to go with it, and just started experimenting with different spices. And that was kind of a fun way to go about it.
So you were her in-house saucier. That's an impressive resume.
Yeah.
You remind me, background-wise, of Alton Brown. And for people who aren't familiar, he had a theatrical degree, but also got into food science. I don't know if he's a food scientist, but I'm just curious. Who are some of your culinary influences?
I mean, Alton Brown for sure, because he ran the first food science television broadcast. And I mean, that show on the Food Network really drove that interest up from the culinary side to the science side. Mm-hmm. But also, just personalities like Emeril Lagasse, Bam. That was such a neat inspiration, just engaging me into what culinary arts could be. And then, of course, the Anthony Bourdains and Andrew Zimmern's of the world to really get that travel and cultural diversity background into food really inspired me.
Oh, those are some of the best late night shows, drunk or otherwise. If you can tune into some Anthony Bourdain, you'll be happy you did it. One guy that I think has kind of taken the torch, and or maybe it's kind of the new generation of Alton Brown, but a little nerdier is I think it's called Jay Kanji Alt. I might be mispronouncing his name, but he was a MIT trained
Okay.
scientist, and then now he's a YouTuber. He was on America's Test Kitchen. Like,
Okay.
I'm trying to learn. Like, it seems like food science is kind of a. I don't want to say it's hip now, but I mean, what's been your experience? Like, is it more popular than 15 years ago, or how would you categorize it?
I think people are being more open to it because they see the industry becoming more natural, more organic. So they want to see, how are these processed foods actually being processed? Because the word processed isn't becoming it doesn't have as bad of a reputation as it did, 20 years ago.
Okay, and thanks for bringing that up because my wife said try to eat less processed food, and I know like so if it's like in a chip bag, I get it. There's like a lot of additives, but I'm
Mhm.
kind of ignorant about like what does it mean for food to be processed?
I mean, for me personally, it's going through a process that makes it safe for consumption. I think if we didn't have processed foods, many of the populations of the world would starve because they live in areas where they're not getting the right nutrients for their daily diet. I mean, just think of having a banana in the middle of winter. I mean, or a banana snack or something like that. Those aren't ingredients that you're able to find safe in the middle of winter in Wisconsin, right? So if you're having some banana flavored yogurt and there's actual banana puree in it, you're still getting the nutrients and the potassium, but it's in just a processed food. It's safer to eat.
So thank you processing. I guess that's I mean there's so many like buzzwords like even if something is organic like I mean can you educate our audience what does that mean to you or is there a standardized definition of organic?
Yeah, so I mean, there is a standardized certification of organic, and the organic certification team or foundation organization, they will audit the companies that you work with, the ingredients that you work with, and make sure they're going through minimal exposure to the preservatives, the pesticides that get sprayed on. So you're not being exposed to some of the different chemicals, but at the same time, those companies are having much higher loss in yields to their crops. So the price goes up. That's why you get such higher price with organic.
So reduce supply. It's not
Yeah.
just the fancy marketing.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of learn more about your journey, Holden. So you're a
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bearcat. You studied
Yep.
science. That
Yeah.
helps what you're doing now, but it's not exactly what you're doing now. So what happened?
Yeah. I mean, so I think where I left off, I was working in the flavor industry. So I did that for, close to 15 years. And one of the things I was doing, every company I worked with was developing beverages. And developing beverages was something I got pretty good at. So I had some nice global wins with beverages, national product launches, and had this idea where, after drinking so much caffeine on some of the products, so a lot of energy drinks, a lot of sports nutrition, pre-workout powders, why does caffeine have to be energy? So uh, in March, I committed full time to launching a brand. And this September, we launched Avika, the caffeine-free alternative energy drink. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm a full-time entrepreneur.
You're a full-time entrepreneur. What's been the biggest surprise about being a full-time entrepreneur?
Oh man, for me, everyone tells you how much time and effort and money goes into it. And they stress it so much. And even it still is underestimated how much time, effort, and money goes into it. I mean, you're working, if you're not doing 12-hour days, at least 6 days a week, then you're going to be in trouble. You got to be fully committed. And I think that's important.
What trained you, or if anything, what prepared you to take this crazy journey?
Uh, for me, it was the idea that I knew if I gave to someone else, they'd be wildly successful at it. And I wanted to keep that one of caffeine-free energy to myself. I'm like, this is something I know I can execute really well on. And it's something I'm passionate about. If I give it to someone else, I'll regret it the rest of my life.
Nice. So you wanted to you were proud of it, so you wanted to keep it that way. You have more control over how it's launched, and
Yeah.
names are important. What's
Mhm.
the story there?
The name of Avika?
Avika, yeah. What?
Yeah. So Avika is actually a Swedish word meaning to deviate from the norm. The brand that we launched, we wanted to make sure everything we do about it is different. So, so from the name itself, the symbolizing the arch on the can is how you would feel when you consume the drink. So you have that nice uplift and you go down smoothly, but you don't have that crash that you go down beneath your comfort level. The gold
So
top.
it's not a
Yeah.
cliff. It's a steady climb up a hill with a gradual descent. I like that.
Yeah. It's a really comforting energy level feeling.
And who would have thought it would be so rebellious? Like you got to give it up for the Swedes for inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, we thought it was such a great name. It fit with who we're going after, and it's playful.
Nice. Gosh, about 20 years ago, I was tangentially involved with the Monster launch, meaning like I knew some people behind it. I had no input myself, but I remember they were like this nice group of, there was a nice family, and then all of a sudden they were way richer. But it felt like winning, well, not winning the lottery. It was more like a hit song because there's so many beverage brands, and then there were at the time there's so many energy drinks. It was like Red Bull, and there were others. But I mean, there's one called Who's Your Daddy? It like crashed and burned. Uh, Big shocker. But like, what is there any rhyme or reason about drinks, like which ones hit and which ones don't?
Oh man, I mean, I think there's a recipe for success, but then it's also a coin flip, right? It's a little bit of luck. I think you got to have the commitment. The the product has to taste good. That's the one thing everyone talks about in the industry. Everyone will buy it once because of how the can looks, but no one will buy it a second time if it doesn't taste good.
Mhm.
Uh, so you got to taste good, you got to look good, you got to have the effort, the commitment, you got to have people getting interested in it. And I think that's the big one. Getting other people interested in what you're doing in the mission is the key to success.
Yeah, I mean, if other people aren't interested, it's just an idea in your head. I mean, you're kind of transforming it from this passion project to a business, and that means customers. So, kind of on the I'll call it culinary or non ingredient end, what are some of the big hurdles? What does one have to do to launch a beverage brand?
Oh man, what does one have to do to launch a beverage brand? So,
I'm
I mean,
taking
first,
notes, so definitely.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you have the idea, and I think for me it's a little different because I come from the industry that gets you started, and that's the flavor industry. Oftentimes, flavor houses is what they're often called, have a R&D department that will help with the formulation of launching a beverage. Some of them will charge a small fee, but most of them, if you have a good idea and good backing, it'll be a free service.
Okay.
Um, Luckily, I've had some connections in the industry, was able to get started with a formula that I worked with uh, came came to them with myself and had a good starting level for some of the other taste ingredients. So you've got the active formulation, which is what makes you unique, but then the taste ingredients itself. So working with them closely, we were able to get a good working formula, sent that to a manufacturer, was able to get the proper documentation that would cover us through an audit with the FDA, and therefore we were ready to go in ordering ingredients and getting this product made.
Wow. And when was the first time, I guess, someone else tried it, where it wasn't like a family member and you were there to witness it? Take us to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that was really neat. I think a fun story about the first store we were ever in is we had uh, we had samples from a pilot run, and the people in the pilot run they tried it, but it wasn't like an actual potential customer, right? So they were being nice, and it was like, all right, I need someone that really is going to be a potential customer to try this. So we went to the store a couple times. They're like, we don't know. We don't want to try something new right now. And eventually we said, we'll give you free case. Let us set up the table. Let people try it. You could sell whatever we give you. and then judge us from there. We ran through the case we ran out of the case in 2 hours, stocked another case, and ran out of that case in another hour. So people loved it, and I knew right away that we had something special.
Congratulations. So I think that's a cool lesson. I've heard shelf space, specifically like Walmart, is maybe the most valuable real estate on the planet. So,
Yeah.
How do you get how do you get on those shelves? Like what?
Yeah. You got to know going into it that you're replacing something else that's selling, or it's not selling as well, but they have to get rid of someone to put you there. So you have to convince them that yours will sell more. They really aren't going to care what they think. They will care what the math says. They want to see the statistical proof that it's going to sell. So you got to come to them with all the data you can. So that's just stories from the store, go running through cases with the demos, promising them that you'll do the same demos in their store, and running through that whole process of negotiations and terms to be added and so forth.
Wow. So, in order to be at this position, Holden, where you can place your product on a shelf, it's probably not free. There's packaging costs, there's shipping costs, there's marketing, there's God knows what else. How'd you navigate that? Like how were you able to cobble together the funding to be where you are today?
Yeah, what I like to talk to people about funding is, first you got to show people you're committed completely, and that for us meant bootstrapping up until launch. That's buying the ingredients, the packaging, the logistics of getting it from the manufacturer to the warehouse, all of that coming out of my life savings and my co-founder's life savings. That I think really shows people these guys are betting on themselves. They're invested in themselves, and they know that they are confident in what they're doing. And then from there, you can ask your friends and family, whatever they're willing to commit. But disclaimer, you have to let them know that 95% of all beverage companies will fail. So you really have to let them know, even if they're completely confident in you, just give what you could afford to lose. I think that's really important. You want to make sure they're on the boat, but you want to make sure they're not going to completely sink if you end up sinking as well. So yeah, I think that's
sales pitch. It's like, 95% of this goes to zero, but here, get your checkbook out.
I think it's important to have your family. I think some other entrepreneurs don't want to do that, but if you're confident in what you're doing, you want to make sure your loved ones are going to win with you and not be out of the loop if somehow you turn into the next unicorn.
Exactly. And there's something infectious about passionate people. You can show charts or, numbers all day, but if someone's like ho-hum, especially about a new innovative idea, I don't see, personally, I wouldn't part with my money, but if someone's super geeked up and enthusiastic, I don't even need to know all the details. I'm like, this guy's into it, or this girl's, I just have a lot more confidence. And I guess, did you have any experience in raising money or pitching before?
Honestly, no. For me, it was, the idea came about, a few years ago, and I was like, all right, this is going to start snowballing in my head to becoming what could become a business. And then I knew I had to start working on whatever the weaknesses were in my skill set to run a business. So that's studying at night, listening to podcasts, educational podcasts throughout the day, and really starting to understand the fundraising aspects, the financial aspects, the sales and marketing aspects of what it takes to run a business. So I didn't know anything before, but I gave myself an honorary master's degree in it in the years leading up to the launch.
I think it should be promoted to PhD. And I guess, in my dating years, I got very used to rejection, but this is a little different when you're raising money. And I mean this sincerely, like it's something you're so passionate about. Very few people relative to those you ask are going to write a check or support you. What advice do you have for people who have an idea, but they're not good at dealing with rejection?
Oh, first advice is you got to become good with rejection. I think I think rejection's a skill. I think anything that makes you uncomfortable is a skill that you can learn that will make you less uncomfortable. I think we often experience it with public speaking. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable to get on stage, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you become with it. Same with rejection. I think you just got to deal with the fact that people will love your idea, but they're going to say no to giving you their own personal funds. I think it's important to know that it's still, you don't know their situation, so take every rejection with a grain of salt.
That's good advice. Rejection, it's almost like working out. The more you do it, the stronger you get. And you're very introspective, Holden. You were willing to kind of take self-inventory and figure out, I need to improve on some things. You listen to podcasts. What are some examples of characteristics or just stuff that you improved on?
Oh man. So some of the things that I believe I improved on really well was being articulate with the numbers of the business and learning the words that you got to use to impress an investor, right? They want to make sure that you understand the finance of your business. And if you don't understand the financial situation of your business, they're going to be very skeptical about what you're doing and really be pushing for some kind of CFO to come on board. But as someone that's leading the business, you still got to know what's going on with the numbers.
Yeah, there's so much jargon. People talk like return on ad spend or ROI, and
yeah,
I think sometimes people just need to not have so many initials. Actually, like
I hate acronyms.
I would like actually spell out the words. Like, don't assume everyone knows all your three-letter.
Yeah. Thankfully, we're in the dawn of AI where I mean, so many acronyms will mean different things per different industries, but luckily I can just say, hey, buddy, ChatGPT, what does ROI mean for food and beverage? And
right.
they'll give me a nice dumbed down explanation. And from there, I'm a little bit smarter.
a little bit smarter. And you mentioned a non-caffeine energy source. Like what, to the extent you can, what's different about Avoca? Like what if I drink coffee, so what would be a benefit for me supplementing or switching to Avoca?
Yeah, so Avica is the caffeine-free alternative. Yeah, it's all good. The Avica is the caffeine-free alternative energy drink that's going to give you the same uplifting effects of caffeine, but without any of the harmful side effects. So I think a lot of people are still going to enjoy their daily morning cup of coffee. There's no problem with that whatsoever. But a lot of people are going to go to an energy drink around 1 or 2 p.m., another cup of coffee around 1 or 2 p.m. They're starting to feel tired. It's the end of the day. They know they've got to either work out, make dinner. They've got things to do when they get home. Avica is the perfect solution to go to later in the afternoon, where you're going to not have that crash, jitters, heart palpitations, sleepless nights, whatever, you name it. You can have an Avica and then even feel more energized the next day. I love to tell people that because you're going to sleep way better than if you have caffeine in the system, because caffeine takes up to 12 hours for anyone to digest, really. So it does affect sleep patterns.
Oh, it definitely does. And I guess what is the magic serum? Like what's in it?
Yeah. I think that's the question we get usually asked first, is what's in it. So looking at the development process, for me, it was, what does caffeine give from a positive function? That's more energy to the muscles. That is more stamina, whether it's just getting through the day or getting through an active event. And looking at what those positive functions are, I was able to use my background in the ingredient space to look at clinically backed, scientifically proven ingredients that serve those same functions. And we worked with 6 different scientifically backed companies that gave us the scientific papers, whatever you name it, dive into the claims that we can make. And we really were able to piece together the right puzzle pieces to paint the picture on what caffeine is from a positive standpoint, but none of the harmful side effects. And I can run through them real quick if you want to. I think it's something people, So D-ribose, it's from a company that brands it as riboactive. It acts almost, it's tough to make this claim, but I think it's just the most simple form to make, to tell people is that it increases muscle power, similar to that of creatine, not like creatine as much because creatine is usually from an artificial source. Natural creatine is coming from fish and meat, and it's a little harder to extract, but this riboactive really helps with the muscle growth. KSM-66 ashwagandha, another great stamina ingredient. Synactive, it's a blend of Panax noda ginseng and Rosa Roxburghi fruit, great for muscle endurance. Some B vitamins, mental focus and clarity ingredients, and some gut health. I'll wrap it up there because it is a long ingredient list, but at its core, it serves a very simple solution to a big problem.
It less jittery, more gut health, and I can tell you paid attention in your science classes, Holden. That was impressive.
Thank you.
I want to like kind of zoom out a little bit because there's a lot of talk now about what we put in our bodies. There's and I know RFK has been a proponent. I mean, lots of people. It's like we spend so much time and money, and this could be a whole other discussion on care after the fact. Like, and I'm no scientist. I understand like there's type 2 diabetes in children is a lot more prevalent than it was when I was a kid. There's probably a million factors, and I'm not trying to guess. I also believe that like when people cook at home, it's probably better than when they eat out at restaurants. I don't think these are really like monumental claims I'm making, but you're more in the space, you're more nuanced, you're smarter, you have cooler glasses. What are some, I guess, hopes that you have for like the global or American consumer in terms of what we eat?
Yeah, for me, it's the education of what the ingredients are that you're putting into your system, and really looking at what companies are calling out healthy when it's really not. I think that's where we're starting to see, hopefully. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with the FDA, but there's going to be some crackdowns on what claims are being made. I mean, a big one is so many sugar-free alternatives, but there's studies on being done and what dangers there are with some of the artificial sweeteners and how they react with gut health. Avica is all natural sweeteners, and then it pairs with a non-GMO dietary fiber powder that's great for gut health. But looking at the artificial sweeteners, they're helping solve the solution, a problem with diabetes, but then it's adding to another problem. So it's just trying to figure out what the general progression is to make the world a healthier place.
Yeah. So what is that general progression?
I think it's the research that these ingredient companies are doing, and that's who we're partnering with, is trying to find the most up-to-date, high-tech, naturally occurring solutions in the ingredient space with the clinical trials that back the claims that people say they're backing. I think you see that in a lot, even the energy drink space a lot, is companies are making claims that are false claims. And when they're big enough, that's when the lawsuit news headline reads and everyone ends up talking about it for a few weeks.
Yeah, you got to be big enough to make the headlines. And I remember, gosh, in the 90s, in school we'd learn about the food pyramid, and you mentioned, Holden, this push towards sugar-free alternatives. And I remember low-fat, non-fat, and now it seems like, well, if it's good to have fat, but you should have more unsaturated fat. Like, what are some claims that were made in the past that we've since learned were probably BS, or at least like, I really wish we didn't say this?
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of things have been, a lot of things with diets, and so many different diets over the past 20 years have been discovered in the way that so many people have followed either a keto diet or a Mediterranean diet or a caveman diet. And from there, you have a good sample size of what these different hardcore diets will do to a body. Mm-hmm. And I think you start seeing what works and what doesn't work. And I think the Mediterranean diet, I remember seeing one time that was out of 50 diets that were studied, that was the number one. So it's the olive oils, it's the salmon, it's the healthy fats, like you were saying, that are really good for you. It's less sugar, or sugar that's being found in natural sources like fruits at a reasonable amount, not like a big dessert or a sugary
Okay.
soda.
Yeah, and gosh, my kids have asked about this, so I'll ask you. Um, Say you have water and you add 10 grams of sugar and
Mhm.
you drink it, versus if you eat an orange or a piece of fruit that has the same grams of sugar. How is that different, or how is it similar in terms of
Yeah,
impacting
I
the
think
body?
as it digests, your body's going to still break it down into glucose, into a very simple carbohydrate. So really, it's going to be the same. I think juice is starting to have a shift towards lower sugar options, how they can dilute with water. You're starting to see that, and then use the flavor industry, which I came from, to build back the flavor so that people can still taste it as juice. You're starting to see fruit being used as concentrates in other products still to get a claim. So you're seeing 10% like coconut water on hydration beverages. I think that's a good way to do it, to still keep the juice industry alive with its great claims in antioxidants and other functional claims, but it's still sugar.
It's still sugar. And I think my wife told me that if you eat fruit with sugar, there's the insulin spike is slower because it has to break down.
It does, yeah. It's a little bit more complex of a sugar molecule, so yeah, it does take a little bit longer. That's true.
So it's not quite the heroin high that you'd get from just pure sugar.
Yeah.
Good to know. Yes, well, that's what I'm going with. I've heard 100% scientifically backed. Uh, well, congrats on launching
Yeah, thank you.
Vika, and I want you to play psychic for a little bit. What say we're having this interview in a few years, and I mean, hopefully we'll have some in between then. But
Mhm.
what would you like to see happen with your brand and your company from now till then?
Yeah, so for us, it's getting onboarded with a national distributor right now and seeing that success grow into a large number of retailers for 2025. That's the plan, the realistic plan, and the momentum and traction is going in that direction. And we want to be able to take the solution that we've discovered to show the people that know they have the problem of too much caffeine, and say, hey, try a Vika, start making a shift to a healthier lifestyle. Still enjoy your coffee in the morning, but don't reach for that extra energy drink in the afternoon. It's not good for you.
Yeah, so supplement it with this.
Yeah.
I like that. And uh, professionally, what are you most proud of?
Oh, professionally, what am I most proud of? Taking the leap. That I think the risks that so many people talk about with entrepreneurship, starting your own business, it could leave a lifetime of regret if you don't do it. And if you do it sooner, it's sooner the better, because if you wait too late, then the risks are so high and there's so much to come back from to comfortably retire. But if you do it early enough, and somehow it doesn't work out, you still got that room to come back and land on your feet.
You got some runway ahead of you, and
Yeah.
there's obviously a huge risk to taking a chance, and there's also a big risk to not doing it, to not
Yeah.
following what you're passionate about. So either way, there's going to be a risk. You just got to pick the one you're more comfortable with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The reward with doing it is much higher, trust me.
And we're all gonna exit this mortal realm one day, and I think looking back, people are just more proud when they take chances, when they go for it. I mean, it's easier. I don't know everyone's circumstance, but like, I don't know, this is just me. A life without taking some risks is super boring. I don't want to be part of that one.
Totally agree.
And now, what I like to ask, I guess this at the near the end of the interview.
Yeah.
What are you most optimistic about, Holden?
About my life, the company.
However you feel, whatever comes up first.
Yeah,
It could be the company,
yeah,
or it could be your life, it could be
yeah.
a podcast. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm most optimistic about the consumer that we're talking to. I think you see this big shift with natural retailers. They're getting busier, they're growing. People are looking for the healthier options, the organics, the naturals, even if it is processed, it is still clean. You're looking at the shift towards these retailers, and that's the spot we're going to play in, and hopefully be a part of this movement that makes the world a healthier, better place.
Well, let's do it. Let's make it better and healthier. And where can people learn more about you? Maybe they want a breakfast pizza recipe. Maybe they're interested in your brand. Where can
Yeah.
we, you know?
Yeah, personally, you can reach out to me via LinkedIn, or Holden.Rouse at divergebrands.co is a good one. Uh, and then drinkavika.com if you want to learn more about Avika, or just send me a message, email, or LinkedIn.
Sounds good. Well, Holden, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope to talk with you soon.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was a great time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.